Welcome back to New Persuasive Words. I'm Scott Jones.
I'm Bill Bohr. It's been a while, Scott.
It's been a while, Bill. It's I've been here. I've been here. You've been
Well,
running
you know, we
around.
we have we've had a little different thing. We have different things, different timetables going on here.
Different times. I'm on the wall, man. I'm here.
You're on the wall. Yeah, you're
I'm on the
good stuff
wall.
happening.
I'm ready. I'm ready. I was I
So there's
was I was hanging out with our good friend Benjamin yesterday. We
yeah, that's good. That's good.
spent a little time.
Yeah, you've
He
been
gave me
doing
some
lots of work.
eggs. Do you know he raises chickens
I think I did know that. I think we've raised that issue before. Yeah.
and they're named
That's
after NPR hosts, but with chicken names. But I can't think of any of them right now. It's funny that I
that's
say
fun.
this, and I don't. They're all very witty. I just can't think of any of the
Right. I
witticisms.
wonder, yeah, I wonder if there's certain ones that are you put at the door in case the fox comes. It doesn't matter. That's actually the fox coming after NPR.
Look, the foxes
There's
come from
prophetic.
Mexico, okay? They're sending us their worst foxes, okay? Some of these foxes are so terrible, they eat the Haitians. Okay, do you know the Haitians were eating the dogs and cats? Then the Mexicans sent us some fox. El Zorro, he was a fox. I always thought Zorro was kind of a little gay. And of course, he was taking from rich. And I kind of call Elon and myself like the opposite of Zorro. Like he took from the rich people and gave it to the poor. And we kind of do the opposite. Okay, we're cutting. What we do is we find okay a little Medicaid here, a little snap. And then Elon, he comes in with these guys and he snaps his fingers and there's no more snap money for the kids. And it just goes right to the tax cuts for the bit, like Zorro,
Yeah. Well, by the
but
way,
kind of the
congratulations.
opposite.
Congratulations on winning your golf tournament the other day.
Do you know he's a real consummate cheater? I mean,
Right.
and
Yeah.
not a bad golfer. So he's not someone that
Well,
would
but
need to
I
cheat.
was.
but-
They were showing some of his multiple attempts to. He gets a lot of do-overs. Apparently, that's part of how that works. But
Well,
regardless,
maybe he'll get a do-over with the federal injunctions and the courts. And
well, certainly, yeah, we would. I don't know. We're certainly getting. We gave him a presidential do-over, and that's actually going worse. So
by the way, Stephen Miller, I watched a clip of Stephen Miller defending this kind of, the not turning the plane around with the Venezuelan
right,
gang members. Somebody needs to tell Stephen Miller that they're serving brewed decaf all over the country. I mean, this guy looks so coked up. I mean, he's a maniac. I mean, aside from the content of what he's saying, I mean, just the intensity level. It scared me. It just. I
Yeah,
thought
I wonder
this
what
is
drug- I
not
wonder what-
normal.
yeah. I wonder what prescription drugs are being. We know. I saw a picture having what drugs everybody's on in the leadership of the Republican.
I'll tell you who's not
government.
probably on a lot of prescription drugs. RFK.
There we go.
He's healthy as a horse.
He's
He is a
Well,
healthy.
the damage has
healthy
been
guy.
done. The brain damage was done long ago.
Well, the worm's not done.
Not where and the heroin, kind of eats holes in there. But
Heroin is. That's amazing that he kicked heroin because they say that's one of the hardest
yeah.
addictions to kick.
well, I don't know how many times in rehab was he. I mean, most people, I don't know. It is a very hard one. You have to do it with drugs. You can't just go off heroin.
You can. I mean, heroin. You can. Heroin withdrawal will not kill you. Benzos and alcohol withdrawal can
Alcohol
kill
withdrawal will kill you. That's something people.
you. No,
don't
you'll
realize.
feel terrible,
Right, I
but
guess,
you
yeah,
can survive
survive.
heroin
that.
withdrawal. But benzos and alcohol.
Could kill you.
Jordan Peterson had a benzo problem.
Yeah, I had a good friend who, almost died going through detox with alcohol. Yeah,
Yeah, it can tremors. Also,
Yeah.
it's terrible.
yeah, terrible. Yeah, well, you sent me, in the midst of so many.
By the way,
interesting
Jordan
things-
Peterson is such a good dresser. So sartorial. He is so sartorial. I sometimes tune in to his
just
stuff
to see him what he's wearing.
just to see what he's wearing. Guy's very stylish, very classy.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And kind of, I mean, sometimes I think he's a 4 on the Enneagram because he's got his own kind of flamboyant style. He's very I won't take that away from you. You can't take that away from me. Da-da-da. So I'm going to read you something, Bill, because you're kind of alluded to our topic,
Right,
and,
right.
and hey, we're moving on from Carmel, Indiana. Oh, by the way, I should check before we get into our topic because I said I
Right.
would do this. I'm
Yes.
going to check just to see what's going on
The news of the day from Carmel, Indiana.
from
Yeah.
Carmel. We're going to check in with our friends. I did.
By the way, have we?
I
found, we
do
have
tell
not yet
Bill
found
this.
We haven't
A
yet found a
correspondent.
correspondent, right? Yeah, no.
No, but Bill and I do talk pretty regularly every day. And the other day I was having breakfast and Bill called and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm reading stories about Carmel, Indiana." Here you go, Bill. From Fox 59. Here's the headline.
All right.
Behind the scenes as NCAA selection committee creates March Madness bracket in a Carmel hotel, right in Carmel, Indiana,
Wow.
in a private room at Boutique Carmel Hotel, at a Boutique Carmel Hotel. 12 people from across the country sit down for one of the hardest jobs in college sports. The NCAA selection committee is tasked with selecting and seeding 68 teams, Bill, for the men's NCAA tournament. That is happening in Carmel, Indiana. And I'll tell you what, if they don't go to the cake shop, they're fools.
Well, and by the way, the state of West Virginia is quite upset with this committee because they did not pick West Virginia to make the make the 68 field of 68. And so the governor of West Virginia has instructed the attorney general of West Virginia to file charges and investigate those 12 folks in Carmel, Ohio, or Carmel, Indiana, because we know that West Virginia doesn't have any bigger problems to deal with.
Why don't
In
they
fact.
secede from the union over this?
Yeah, but we'll secede from the NCAA, right?
Well, I'll tell you what, despite this obvious, I'm not even going to call it an oversight, an overt slight to the Mountaineers, to our great Mountaineers.
Mm.
I'm going to say this. I still have confidence in this bracketing process because we know this, Bill, from our in-depth analysis in Carmel, Indiana, things still work. Okay.
So things still
You get
work.
the same mayor for decades. You get rid of the traffic lights.
Yeah,
They know how to
very
make
good.
a cake.
And-
This is
and they
no
know-
better
and they-
place.
and they know how to set up arguably the best sporting event of the year. There
Of the
we
year,
go.
right? In
Yeah.
Carmel. I mean, Bill, this is, I think, now the podcast is going to be divided into BC and AC, before Carmel and after Carmel. I mean, we did 300 and some episodes. 300, can you believe? I mean, with this is hundreds and hundreds of, without Carmel, Indiana on our
Right.
radar, with absolutely no recognition. We've talked about
recognition.
existential philosophy, atheism, Supreme Court decisions.
Right.
We've talked about canine behavior, everything. All unbeknownst to us, with this jewel of a city just sitting, evading our gaze and attention.
Yeah. No, I think you're right.
What have we been doing this whole time?
It could be the new Heidelberg of America.
Exactly. And if there's anybody listening, we are still looking for a Carmel, Indiana correspondent. And we would love to come. We will come to Carmel and do a show. We're happy to do it.
We would do that. And if you from the cake shop.
I'll do it right for the cake shop,
From the
buddy.
cake shop, right.
Well, Bill, on to our topic here. I'm going to read you a little something, and we'll get going. After years of polarized politics, nepotism from previous rulers, and disputed claims to power, an unpredictable and egotistical leader believes that God had saved him to make the nation great again. He is acclaimed as the most powerful leader in the world and instantly surprises everyone by issuing a raft of disruptive new measures to radically change the way society functions, and announces that he is going to target anti-Christian bias in society. Sound familiar, Bill? No, it's not Donald Trump. It is the 4th century ruler of the Roman Empire, Constantine the Great. And the parallels are striking.
Please
That
tell us who that. Tell us who came up with that.
This is from Graham Tomlin, who wrote a lovely piece on Pascal the other day.
Right.
And I sent that to you, which we may wind up talking about later this week. Wonderful piece on Pascal.
Right.
And this piece, different.
Yeah, it might be a century he wants to stay away from. That's all I can say, because that's fascinating. Well, you and I have mentioned before, because again, it's amazing how many people talk about Constantine and Constantinianism without actually knowing much about the man. And it looks like we have another addition to that pantheon of ignorance.
It's not a short list.
Not a short list. Yeah. So,
by the way, my friend Peter Lightheart wrote a book years ago called Defending Constantine, and it's a pretty good book. I mean, it's he definitely has a sanguine view of the 4th century Roman emperor, and in the book, Lightheart is really targeting Yoder, Harawas, and the increasing tribe of folks. This was written, though, God, this book had to have been written 15 years ago, at least 20 years ago.
Or more, right?
Yeah. So he was writing, addressing this fairly burgeoning group of people that really look at Constantinianism and the 4th century as the early 4th century as the decline of all things Christian.
It's amazing how that questionable historical position, at least questionable at best, really, and a really limited, if we'll just say it, we'll call it limited understanding of the complexity of both the time and the man. But that's how people treat that, as if that's fact, right? It's amazing. Like, people just start at that point often, in the post-Constantinian. If I hear that one more time anywhere, I mean, I get that. I don't think Vermont is the center of post-Constantinian Christianity. I'm not sure it's the center of Christianity at all. But
no, Bill, that's Carmel, Indiana.
That's Carmel, Indiana.
We know that.
But this constant
that might be the new Constantinople. That's what we're going to call it from now. The new Constantinople, Carmel, Indiana.
Well, and the fact is, the guy even says, and he was so arrogant that he named a new capital after himself. Well, he built the city. Right? There wasn't much there, and he built Constantinople. I mean, it's I don't know.
Much as Washington laid out. Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I mean, there's a sense, very, very similar, right? They both kind of did a little architectural, and although Washington actually was an architect, but I don't know. I don't know if Constantine had that in his portfolio or not. I do think, comparing Trump to Constantine again is a great insult to Constantine, regardless of.
Well, I've declared on this show, I don't even like the Mussolini comparisons. I think those are unfair to Mussolini. I think Mussolini was an intellectual that read books and ran and got the trains running on time. I mean, again, there's a lot of unfair comparisons with Trump.
Yeah. But I guess this idea that, I found it. I don't even know where to begin to respond to it.
Bill, after his accession, Constantine, like Trump, introduced new economic policies to reverse rampant inflation, restructured government, and strengthened military capacity to deter the empire's enemies. He also started to give privileges to the until now persecuted Christians. Come on, Bill. It's the same thing.
Same thing, true.
Why didn't he build a wall? That's what Trump.
Look, I like Constantine, but like if he had built a wall, like you go up to France, you make the French pay for it, the Gauls pay for it. Okay, you say, look, we're keeping the Visigoths out, and we're gonna make Gaul pay for it. Okay.
Well, Hadrian had already done that for him, right? Yeah. I this is actually, I think I like this comparison. I don't know which I like least, the Cyrus or Constantine. At least we're kind of getting closer. We're moving up in history. So, instead of biblical ignorance, We just have late antiquity ignorance. So I think I can. I guess I can live with late antiquity ignorance better than I can biblical ignorance. I don't know.
But Bill, there's so much ignorance in the country to choose from. You know,
Yeah.
there's no shortage on ignorance.
Yeah. Which you called me the other day and said that's one of the reasons we're out of touch. Because
Absolutely,
we
absolutely.
read because we read.
I know. I did. I said, well, part of the problem is we read the New York Times. I said, no. Part of the problem is we read in general.
Read in general. It's not the New York Times. We read.
Yeah. No. This is we are. I tell you this regularly on the phone. I said, Bill, we're out of touch, and then I usually have another reason. And a lot of our listeners are out of touch. In the sense that what I mean by that is that there's Ezra Klein just had this amazing pollster on talking all about
I read that,
the electoral results. Is incredible. But one of the things is people like you and I that regularly read the New York Times, we became more liberal over the past 4 years while the country drifted rightward, right? So in some level, it's interesting he pointed out, and had we had 2022's turnout, right? Because turnouts tend to be lower in off year election in midterms, Kamala Harris would have won the popular vote and the electoral college. Had it been higher turnout, Trump would have won the popular vote by 5%, and it had a more decisive electoral college win. And so he was saying, one of the things that they were saying is that this narrative that the Democrats that stayed home really hurt us. Their data said that basically a lot of these people were more pissed at Biden than the Democrats, even though they might have been registered Democrat. Had they showed up, they would have probably voted for Trump.
Yeah, and I guess part of the analysis was they basically were reacting to inflation, right? Yeah. So because they weren't reading really, they didn't really care about what's going on internationally. They're not actually reading any news or probably watching any news, right? So the uninformed,
they're not even aware that the NCAA selection committee is meeting in Carmel, Indiana.
Well, I have to admit, I didn't know it was in Carmel, Indiana.
Well, Bill,
either,
this is why I'm around.
I did fill out my bracket, but I did not know where that was formed, right? So getting back to the Augustinian thing or the Constantine thing, I who was it that said that history doesn't repeat, but it echoes? So I do think there are times, particularly for people who really understand. Gosh, I can't remember now, but was it Andrew Sullivan who wrote the thing on late Plato's the demise of democracy and late democracy? Talking about Plato's Republic, where he talks about it. Was that Andrew Sullivan, or feels like one of those guys about 10 years ago or so, right? Remember that?
I don't remember. We talked about it. I don't remember.
I don't know who wrote that, but now there is a very helpful appropriation of historical stuff, because the person was well read in Plato, and the parallels were kind of helpful, right? That's something I go back to frequently. I mean, whether it be the misuse of Bonhoeffer by the best-selling author who I don't, which should we his name should not be mentioned, or do we mention
Eric Metaxas?
Yeah, if you please stay away from that book, but because it's such a violence to Bonhoeffer. But again, this reappropriation of figures and things like that. I mean, there's a real benefit. I do it all the time. I mean, if you're sitting or listening to my sermons, you're going to get historical examples. But I think this guy, maybe he felt like he was on a roll after the Pascal thing worked. That let's just
go through church history. Come on, I'm on fire, baby. Let me give you another passage from this. Eusebius, the great historian of the early church, wrote. He's talking about how, in light of all
let's call him the prominent historian.
The prominent. He's making history great again. Okay, yeah. Eusebius, he's talking about how Eusebius was responding to this new circumstance where a lot of Christians were delighted with new privileges and thrilled to just not be getting persecuted in certain parts of the empire. He writes, in every city, the victorious emperor published decrees full of humanity and laws that gave proof of munificence and true piety. All tyranny had been purged away. It could be the voice of a Southern Baptist. Yet on the other hand, Constantine was irascible, unpredictable, and vindictive. He had his second wife, 3 brothers-in-law, his eldest son, and his father-in-law executed.
Did he point out that his second wife had an affair with his oldest son? That was part of what got him in trouble. Yeah. I guess he left that part out. Not that I'm advocating.
Are we going to see
killing
executions of family members at Mar-a-Lago?
Well, I'm sure they'd like to do some executions.
He's never liked Tiffany. He's never liked Tiffany.
No, but I think what's interesting too is what often, and people like the pseudo, church, I guess what you call them, theological folks, or people talking about church growth or things like that. The Alban Institute type who talk about Constantinianism. What they don't often realize is that there were a lot of people. The majority of bishops, they liked that they weren't being killed anymore. But Eusebius was a minority.
I like my bishops not being killed. Okay, if I'm choosing like John McCain, I like my warriors not captured. Okay.
Well, there was a story at Nicaea where there had been a bishop who had his eye poked out, being tortured, and that Constantine, when he saw him, went up and kissed the eye socket. Now, whether that happened or not, the kind of it's probably one of the most difficult cultural transitions that the Christian faith has ever dealt with, where you go within memory and your own experience of being tortured and persecuted, watching your confirmation youth being killed, to having an emperor call you together to try to help you come up with an agreement. And a lot of people walked away from Nicaea, the first Nicaea, a lot of bishops go, what just happened there? And we know it's a rocky history after that with Constantine's successors, where people like Basil of Caesarea, Basil the Great, Ambrose, openly opposing and defying the orders of the emperor. By the way, both of those guys won in those confrontations. But so I just think it was problematic in the people who experienced it. And I think, like there are certainly a minority group of Americans who probably would be quite happy with Arius as well, which you seem to be okay with, who embrace this, right? There's a minority who are all in. Matter of fact, Eusebius even talked about this could be the beginning of the millennium.
I mean, right. I remember that.
Yeah. So there are a handful of folks who think that. I would say they have the same theological sophistication that Eusebius did as well. I would say I just insulted Eusebius. But Eusebius was not never. Eusebius went back to his church and said, we just approved exactly what we believe here, and then proceeded to teach something totally opposite to the spirit of Nicaea. So that's where Eusebius was.
By the way, did you see what Trump did this week?
That's a loaded.
He now has hung the Declaration of Independence in the Oval Office, the original. But you have to keep it. He's like, you have to kind of there's drapes, right? So it's like so it looks like drapes. It looks like a window, but he unveils it, showing it to Laura Ingraham, I think, from Fox. He's like, it's very cool, right? I mean, but you have to kind of, they told me with the light and all, and the light comes in, and you have to. But he says, look at this. It's been for decades just in like a vault, and you think Biden would ever do this? I mean, you think Biden even knows what it is? So
wow, yeah.
The Declaration, the original copy, is now in the Oval Office. So if you were lucky enough to get a White House tour and they walked you through the Oval, I don't know if they do that, but you don't get to
go to you don't get in the Oval Office and just even.
You got to be a donor.
You have to be a donor.
You have to be in the Epstein list.
You have to be a donor or a foreign leader who they want to humiliate. I think that's the short list. Or you get to be Marco sinking in the couch.
Little Marco. I love what he said. I love what he said. You know what? We're gonna get the Panama Canal back. And I told Marco, and if it doesn't work out, look at Marco. We know who to blame.
There we go. It's already set up. Yeah.
Oh, God.
So I mean,
the unashamed lack of loyalty is so great.
breathtaking. So I would like to hear kind of your final thoughts on this, because sometimes I get so frustrated with this misappropriation of folks that I feel like I communicate as frustration as opposed to anything insightful.
I do think that what you say, the thing that you said that sticks in my mind is just how traumatic the 4th century was for the church. Right. That you go from times, and it's not as though before 311 it was all heavy persecution all the time for the church. It certainly wasn't. And it's not as though it was universal geographically, right? There were certain parts of the empire that it was much worse to be in than others. But in general, before the early 4th century, it could be really, really arduous and difficult to be a Christian.
The Diocletian was the worst universal persecution that happened, right before Constantine, right?
Yeah. So you're coming off of, that's a good point. You're coming off of one of the most intense persecution periods. So yeah, it was really a difficult thing to be a Christian, and so to acclimate to this new reality is traumatic and hard, and the amount of discernment it takes. It's not as though, it's not as though you have centuries of just war theory or theology and philosophy of statecraft. They don't, right? You start as you start following Jesus. Right. You're an alternative community that, we might call socialist today or something. You look more like the Amish than you do the Catholic Church in some levels. And now you all of a sudden you have to think through, what does it mean to be enfranchised culturally? And that's really hard work. And also, I think it's Leslie Newbegin talks about this. Like, what did you want the bishops to do, to say you can't convert? Even let's say the conversion was authentic. Maybe it was a sham. And Lightheart in his book, he really makes a lot of thinking that there was some sincerity to the conversion. Other historians think, it's opportunistic.
But I actually think
if you can't beat them, join them, kind of thing. People have said,
but the Christians were still a minority.
Yeah.
They were still a minority when he did. Now, I think it's a faith and politics and ambition and pseudo paganism and all that is in this cocktail when you try to. I think if you want to have a full picture of Constantine, you don't want to be reductionist. He's not a modern cynical person who uses Christianity like some people we know. It could be both genuine and manipulative at the same time, right? And I think and he got baptized on his deathbed, which he did not have to do, right? So I think that shows at least he thought it was right. There was nothing gained from an earthly perspective by him being baptized on his deathbed.
Yeah. The other thing I think that what you said puts into relief is you have in the 4th century a church that really doesn't have any experience with cultural power. You have a church in the United States in the era of Trump that, again, to quote Limbeck, the church in America is no longer established, but not yet disestablished, right? It doesn't have the cultural power it maybe once did, but it's not persecuted. It's not, you might not be able to put the 10 Commandments up, which what happens if you don't put the 10 Commandments up? All the kids go gay. I've seen it. I've seen 3rd graders. Once you take the 10 Commandments down, the teacher goes gay. The kids are all gay. Everyone's just gay. I've never seen anything. Some of them turn trans. You put the 10 Commandments. I've done an experiment like this in elementary school classrooms. I've just covered up the commandments, and people start lisping, and they're saying fabulous. And then you uncover it. Everybody's heteronormative again. It's an amazing experiment. Which
is amazing, since the 10 Commandments doesn't speak to that subject at all, but just the power of having it on the wall.
I'm on a roll. Don't stop. Don't stop. Don't stop.
Please finish.
This is. But so while there is clearly part of the progressive quote unquote, secularly, whatever we want to call it,
Right.
that's hostile to Christianity. It's not as though Christianity still doesn't have tremendous cultural power and privilege.
Yeah,
even if Kamala Harris would have won, there still would have been tremendous culture, power, and privilege. I'll conclude with something that Mr. Tomlin wrote, that a lot of what's in the piece, too, I'll link to it. A lot of what's in the piece, you and I wouldn't have a problem with. Some of the comparisons we would. But he says this: the church under Trump might be glad of laws and cultural moves that make it easier to practice and promote their faith. Yet the danger of allowing Trump rather than Jesus to determine the church's vision of leadership and lordship remains. In subsequent years, while making the most of opportunities that a newly Christianized empire gave, the church also needed figures like Ambrose, the 4th century bishop of Milan, who was willing to ban the emperor Theodosius from church when he committed crimes in the name of the empire. It also needed the radical Christianity of the desert fathers and mothers who withdrew to remote places to pray and live a radically alternative lifestyle from the increasingly soft and easy Christianity of city life. As Paul Kingsworth recently reminds us, this is a great quote: the monks built the West just as surely as the soldiers did, and they built the more enduring part.
Yeah, very good.
That is true. Profound, right? That is a great quote. I don't know who Paul Kingsworth is, but
that's good. I agree with that.
Yeah. This is sort of like the book "The Irish Saved Civilization."
Yeah,
right?
This also a great book. Yeah, no, good point. That's an excellent point. You be careful what you celebrate.
Amen to that. And the beat goes on.
Peace, everyone.